Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our channel. And today we are diving into one of the most gut wrenching betrayals you will ever hear about. Buckle up because this one hits different. What we have here is the story of Thomas, a man who gave his entire soul to a company, to a partnership, to a person named Bill. Years of loyalty, sacrifice, and quiet suffering all came crashing down in a single brutal moment when Bill looked Thomas died in the eyes and told him he was done, fired, discarded, like he meant nothing. But here's the thing: Thomas didn't crumble, he didn't beg, he didn't scream. Instead, he did something far more powerful. He left 7 words hanging in the air that Bill will never ever be able to unhear. And those 7 words, they changed everything. Let's set the scene properly because the context here is everything. Thomas had not just worked for this company, he had bled for it. We are talking about a man who had poured his time, his energy, his relationships, and his identity into building something alongside Bill. He had stood in rooms where other people were quietly tearing Bill apart behind his back, and Thomas had defended him. Every single time he had made sacrifices that most people would never even consider. All because he believed in the partnership, believed in the vision, and more than anything, believed in Bill. But things had been changing, slowly, painfully. The dynamic between them had shifted. The trust that once made their partnership feel unbreakable had started to crack. First in small, barely noticeable ways, and then more and more visibly until it was impossible to ignore. Thomas could feel it. He knew something was coming, and yet, even knowing that nothing could have fully prepared him for the moment it actually arrived. When Bill finally stopped pacing and locked eyes with Thomas, the room went cold. I can only imagine what that felt like to look at someone you have stood by through everything, someone you have protected and defended and see nothing but coldness staring back at you. Bill's voice was sharp, final, and completely devoid of warmth. You are done here. 3 words, that's all it took to unravel years of everything. And what makes it even harder to stomach is that Thomas didn't immediately fall apart. He stayed calm, almost eerily calm, as if deep down some part of him had already been preparing for this day, had already rehearsed how to survive it. But calm on the outside does not mean calm on the inside. And underneath that composed exterior, Thomas was experiencing something that can only be described as a deeply personal kind of devastation, betrayal, anger, and something that felt dangerously close to heartbreak. Because that is exactly what this was, a heartbreak, not romantic but in every other meaningful sense of the word. He gathered himself enough to ask the only question that mattered in that moment. After everything, and Bill, without a single pause, without even a flicker of hesitation, responded with 2 words. After everything, I cannot stress enough how brutal that response is. Those 2 words carried the weight of an entire history together. Every late night, every sacrifice, every time Thomas had chosen loyalty over his own comfort, all of it dismissed in 2 syllables. Imagine how he felt, imagine standing there and hearing that from someone you genuinely believed in. There was someone else in the room watching all of this unfold. A woman who had clearly seen the writing on the wall long before either of the 2 men had been willing to admit it. She had watched the cracks form, had watched them spread, and now she was standing there in silence as the whole thing finally collapsed in real time. Her presence is significant because she represents what so many of us are when we watch people we care about self destruct, a helpless witness, fully aware of the tragedy playing out but powerless to stop it. Thomas, for his part, wasn't finished. He asked Bill the kind of question that cuts right through to the heart of a person's logic, or lack thereof. You think this is going to fix things? You think getting rid of me solves your problems? Bill's answer was cold and dismissive. It solves one of them. Wow, I can't believe he said that. Just casually reducing Thomas, this man who had given everything to a problem that is not just an insult. That is a revelation of character, and Thomas caught it. He caught something else too, a flash of something in Bill's expression, something that lasted only a fraction of a second but was unmistakably there. Doubt, maybe even regret, but Bill buried it fast, pulling his armor back up before anyone could really see it. Except Thomas saw it, and that moment of seeing it changed something in him. The anger didn't leave him, but it transformed. It stopped being a raw, reactive emotion and became something far more focused, far more intentional. It became clarity. And that clarity was the beginning of a shift that neither Bill nor anyone else in that room was fully prepared for. Thomas had spent years being the loyal right hand man, the fixer, the person who held things together behind the scenes, who cleaned up messes, who made sure everything ran smoothly to Bill could stand at the top and take the credit. But standing there in that moment of cold dismissal, Thomas realized something profound, something that should have dawned on him long before this. But better late than never. He didn't have to keep playing that role, not for Bill, not for anyone. A faint smile appeared on his face, barely there, but enough, and Bill noticed it. The shift in energy was so unexpected that Bill actually demanded to know what Thomas found so amusing. Thomas brushed it off with a simple response, but what he had said next was anything but simple. You are making a mistake, and deep down, you know it. Bill scoffed, I don't make mistakes. Thomas looked at him for a long moment after that, really looked at him, searching for anything that might suggest this wasn't truly the end. That somewhere beneath the coldness there was still something salvageable. He found nothing, and that nothingness was the final answer he needed. What happened next is the part that gives me chills every single time. Thomas didn't argue, he didn't beg. He didn't raise his voice. He straightened his jacket slowly, deliberately, like a man who has just made peace with something enormous, and he accepted it, not as defeat, as a decision. He said quietly, all right, if that's how you want it, and then he began walking toward the door. He paused. For a second, it seemed like he might just leave without another word, and honestly, that alone would have been powerful. But Thomas had one more thing to say. He turned slightly, not fully, just enough, and he let 7 words fall into the room like a verdict. You just destroyed the only man loyal. The impact was immediate. Bill's expression cracked, just for a second, just enough, and in that second, everyone in the room could see that Thomas had hit exactly where he intended. Because those words weren't shouted, they weren't drenched in emotion. They were calm, steady, absolute, and that made them devastating in a way that no outburst ever could have been. Thomas walked out, the door clicked just shut behind him, and the room went completely still. What Bill did in that room was not just a firing, it was a demolition. He didn't just end a professional relationship, he destroyed the one person who had consistently, unwaveringly chosen him when others hadn't. And the consequences of that are going to echo far beyond that room. The women who witnessed it all said it plainly. You might want to think about what you just did. Bill had no answer. For possibly the first time in a long time, his usual confidence had nothing to hold on to. Thomas, meanwhile, walked out into the morning air carrying both the weight of the loss and the fuel of something new. He allowed himself to feel the grief of it, the real human pain of being discarded by someone you gave everything to, but only briefly, because grief was not going to be the defining chapter of this story. What Thomas left behind in that building was not just a job or a title. He left behind a version of himself that was always playing second. And what he carried out with him was the most dangerous thing a person can possess after betrayal: unshakable clarity about who he is and what he is capable of. Fairmont Crest had not seen the last of him, not even close. Here is what I honestly believe. Bill made the single biggest mistake of his career in that room. You don't throw away loyalty like it's disposable. Loyalty, like Thomas, doesn't come around twice. It doesn't get replaced with a new hire or a better offer. And the fact that Bill couldn't even hold eye contact for more than a second after those 7 words tells you everything you need to know. He knew exactly what he had just done. And the saddest part, he did it anyway. Some people only understand the value of something after it is already gone. Thomas walked away from everything he had built with someone who didn't deserve him, and he walked away standing tall. That is not a loss, that is a liberation. Whatever comes next for him, you can feel in every line of this story. That it is going to be something Bill never anticipated, and I, for one, cannot wait to see what that looks like. What do you think? Did Thomas handle this the right way? Were those 7 words the perfect exit, or do you think he should have said more? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story moved you the way it moved me, Please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a moment because we are just getting started.